But thanks for meeting me again. I apologize for the technical difficulties we had, but we were literally in mid conversation when we got shut down last time. So we'll try to pick up the thread here.
I know we got deep and everybody missed it, so maybe they'll wanna
Yeah,
tune in now because we know each other better and, the
right.
content
And
always
we're
gets
matching
deep.
today. We're
More
explaining.
magic.
We planned that,
Absolutely.
so that's perfect. Great. So, really, we talked a lot about the book, and I really want to talk more about you and your practices and what that looked like kind of getting into the books. Neuroscience tells us that clarity in this work that you do as a coach has a mental and an emotional process, right? And so, what are some practices that you found most powerful when you're going for grounding or clarity just in your daily life?
Well, so there's a coaching tool called the Emotional Triad that I really highly recommend to people. It's think about, a triangle and the bottom leg is how you're using your physiology. So the first thing I would do is move my body. It may be stretching out, it may be going on a walk, it may be just pacing around the house, whatever you have to do, like to move your body. The second thing is focus. So I would have something that I wanted to either journal about or talk to somebody about. Like I'll have a focus area. And then the third thing is looking at the meaning that we're attaching to it, because the meaning is what summons how we feel about something. So therefore, we're able to summon certain emotions and we can decide whether we want to summon positive or negative emotion. So it's super easy to attach a meaning that can be really disempowering when we're in a bad mood. But when we're wanting to summon a good mood, then we might have to come up with a way of looking at things that's more positive. And if that's really hard to do, sometimes just dumping all of the crap into the journal, you can start to resource yourself and arrive at a better way of looking at things.
Yeah, so this is a practice that you take on sort of a regular, semi regular basis.
It's become second nature. I don't think, "Oh, the triad," occasionally I do. Occasionally I do. The times when I'm starting to feel a little bit more on the depressed side and my hand touches my forehead, it's like this, that is my first signal to go, "Whoa, physiology, triad, let's do this." Because if I start to go inward like that, the minute that happens, it's kind of my telltale for myself that I am doing depression. I'm prepping myself to go inward and to connect with myself, and sometimes it's not in a good way.
Yeah, actually, I love that because I think especially and I'm not claiming to say there's a gender difference here or something. I think one of the things I did, as in my personal development journey is I became a yoga teacher because, I feel like I can't think of a time where anybody said, Ryan, you have to do this, but it just kind of felt like, you know, as a man, a boy, little boy, whatever, hey, you've got pain. So just kind of, you got to deal with that. You got to toughen up. So you just got this message to sort of ignore. And I realized I was like, man, I don't know. What is it sounds silly, but like, what does my toe feel like? And one of the things that came up in there was somatic cues. So I would literally, like when stress would hit, I found myself like holding my breath. So I started paying attention to just like, if you're holding your breath, like you're having like a difficult conversation with somebody and I might ask them a question and then I'd hold my breath and like kind of, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm doing that. And that's sort of my somatic signal, right? It's like, oh, something's off here, right? For me, it was just like, hey, let's breathe. But I think that really shows some wisdom there. When your hands on your head, I like that. I'm like, huh, I wonder what else I do that is sort of, an indicator of stress or something that I need grounded or clarity with.
I also hold my breath. I've definitely noticed that. I think that there's certain things maybe that are common to people, and it feels so good when I let myself really breathe, right?
Yeah.
Then it's like, so I guess it's kind of like poker. There's tells. And
Yeah.
maybe we could think of it that way and make it fun. It's like, okay, that's a tell that I'm putting myself in depression, or that's a tell that I'm making myself frustrated because I'm holding my breath, or that's a tell that, there may be certain things that we're doing with our bodies that, like you said, you don't even know. So now, everybody can have the awareness that, oh, there could be a lot more tells out there that we're not aware of. So let's start to get into that higher view and look down on ourselves and start to be that observer and see what we come up
Yeah.
with.
And I love that there's a triad too, because, that can get really confused, like kind of complex really quick, right? And if you've got three parts, that's sort of easy to consider to start. I think I like what you said is you don't think about the triad anymore, but you notice, the sort of first sign, you're like, okay, I've got to do something here. And I think that's the point we want to get to. Maybe you have to start. And I love that, it starts with, move your body. I love running. I don't do it nearly as much as I like, but I'm never like happier than when I'm like run. I have like the best ideas. And then, as a matter of fact, I tried to get this app from my watch where I could just sort of start putting down the ideas in my watch. That didn't really work out too well, but I'm still, I try to capture those ideas because I just think there's something between movement and, like you said, that base level of the triad. What's that for you?
Well, I wish I loved running. I like walking and hiking and definitely getting outside and I will push myself to kind of I'm like a run walk person. Like I'll go, okay, I just need to run to that pole over there. And then like I give myself these little, goals because I know it's almost more like hit training, right? But I'm communing with you because I think that it does bring up those endorphins and that can make you feel so good. And maybe that stimulates our brain in a different way and we can come up with ideas. So I definitely come up with ideas when I'm connecting in nature. I talk in my book about this. I live near a reservoir that has this walking path around it, and it's just gorgeous. It has tons of beautiful trees, a lot of guardian oaks. And I have this one tree that whenever I stop and just put my hand on it and connect in, I get the most amazing ideas. It's unbelievable what comes to me and I guess because I'm kind of welcoming it and I'm feeling the energy exchange. Like for example, one time I remember I had this idea and I turned it into an article which is on my website and it's about are you a sponge or are you a bubble? And what I
Yeah.
mean by that, are you somebody who absorbs negative energy and holds on to it and then finally has to wring it out and it's just kind of this intense, emotional wave? Or are you somebody who knows psychic protections and things to, protect yourself from negative energy arrows and create that force field in a sense around you so that when, negative energy comes in, it can bounce right off of you. So I don't know why that just came to me that day, but I was literally connecting with my guardian oak when that happened. And I feel like so many people can relate to it. And it's opened up this whole conversation about our personal responsibility with the energy arrows that we put out into the world also. But not only like how we receive them, but how we deliver them and whether we're taking responsibility for how they affect people.
Yeah. That reminds me of I used to run. There's a national park near here in Cincinnati. I used to live on the other side of town, and I'd run. And there's always the on the trail. There was this tree that was like split, and every time I would run through that tree, I don't know what the scent of the flower was or whatever, but it would just I started like associating that smell with like the good endorphins from running and all that, and the ideas would just flow from there. So it was pretty powerful.
I
But
have
I
that with
definitely
rosemary. So I totally dig what you're
wow.
saying because on my trail near my house, actually, there's people with rosemary in their gardens. And I'd always kind of like pinch a little sprig off. And while I was walking, smell it. And it's definitely a wonderful way of activating your senses.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an incredible thing, and, I back to your article, I saw the title of that article and I was like, "What? I've never heard this analogy before, right? Of the bubble or the sponge." I was like, and I thought that was such a unique sort of analogy that you made there, right? But it made a lot of sense, right? Are you taking everything in or you sort of have protection? And I like that it wasn't like you didn't say shell. It wasn't like I have a hard shell that's not letting anything in. It was sort of, it was a bubble, it's sort of somewhat permeable and it just sort of seems to suggest the responsibility that you were suggesting in the energy that you're taking in and putting out in the world.
I love that you say that's kind of semi-permeable because that is something that I thought about too, where we can consciously choose what we let in and we can consciously choose when to protect ourselves. And one area where I do that with friends is when somebody just is having a tough time, and actually I have to do it in coaching too. It's really I'm so empathetic that it's really easy for me to basically feel what they're feeling, and that can take over some of my positive thoughts, especially when I'm trying to be there for someone. So my friends and I have created this idea of you probably heard of it maybe where you hold a basket for someone.
Yeah.
basically what you're doing is while they're talking, you're not just taking it all in and like, "Ew," and absorbing it and starting to feel everything with them. You are relating, but that you're looking at the energy directing next to you, like into this basket, and then you're dumping it for them. And so it's a little bit of a protection in the sense that it's not directing right into you, but it's just this way you're doing it in your mind where you're directing it just kind of into this basket. It could be a trash basket, it could be a woven basket, it could be whatever you want, but it's this idea that you're not going to let it completely take your body over. If you have a lot of empathy, these kind of strategies can help a lot.
Yeah, I think that reminds me of, I did this meditation once. It was actually on Zoom, and this person, was doing this. And I was sort of new to this space a little bit, and I sort of like got the impression I was in quote unquote a woo woo space, but I was like, "Ah, I'm going to be open to this or whatnot." And it was similar to that. It was like take something, negative or a regret or a grudge or something, and like literally picture this fire and like throw it in there. And one of the things that's come up for me now, just listening to you having this conversation, is there's intentionality behind that. You're sort of telling your subconscious, you're like, hey, I'm done with this, and like in your example, I'm throwing it in the basket. And something I remember, I think again, we had a little bit of a conversation before our technical difficulties last time. You had talked about visualization, and you sort of, I think you referenced that story. How does that show up for you with this basket and this idea of intentionality and I don't know, in this context that we're talking about, do you have any experience that's like adjacent to that?
I think that I'm kind of generally a fixer type of person, and I know men get categorized as fixers a lot, but I think I'm a fixer. And so what happens is that if I don't make a conscious decision to just, be there for someone, and then I sometimes will ask at the end of it, would you like a reflection? How open are you to some ideas or my thoughts? Because, actually, there's a number of communication tools that I can use and everybody can benefit from when you're starting a conversation with somebody who's about to unload or needs your help. You can say, what would you like? Would you like me to problem solve this with you, or would you just like me to listen today? And if you can't do that in the beginning because they're just launching into it, then just take it into the basket, be that observer so that you don't get caught up in their emotions. You're going to feel something. Don't worry. You're not like, cutting off your emotions or anything. It's just that you're doing it a little bit more conscious way, like you said. And then what you do is at the end, offer that reflection. If they're open to it, it's totally fine if they don't want to hear your thoughts. I think that's what's really tough is as a fixer, is you might even have something that you feel would really help them. But you got to remember they have to be open to it. So you can give them the perfect solution, but if they're not open to it, it's not going to help. So it's getting them in a mindset of receiving. So inviting them to the answers or to your perspective, if nothing else. It may or may not fit, but I think that's really helped me as well because people, they just sometimes need to dump it out. And I try to do that through a journaling practice. So I'm not burdening everybody when I'm highly emotional, but sometimes there's that trusted friend that you kind of end up unleashing on. And sometimes, you have to ask yourself, how open am I to really receiving what they have to say? So it can go both ways.
Yeah, I know that I have clients sometimes where, a lot of like my coach training is to try to get to, the problem that we're solving. But a lot of it is just having the space to be heard, is such a powerful place that we just don't have a lot of that, and it sounds like that's what you're describing.
It is. Well, and I'm talking mainly about friends who you aren't really necessarily hiring you as a coach. I think the coach relationship's a little different because they're paying you to help them.
Sure.
Or there's
Yeah.
already kind of a understanding or a permission up front. But I guess that, I could see how there is a little bit of a subtle y- approach to where there are times when maybe they don't want you to try. They're not necessarily wanting you to fix every little thing. Sometimes they
Yeah.
just want to be heard out. And then you could say, what area would you like to focus on? Because you might have some thoughts. And then at the end, when, kind of maybe they're past that intensity of it all, you could say, there were a few other things that came up for me while we were talking. Would you like to discuss those or hear me out? And it's that invitation. I think that's what I want to get across. It's inviting people to the information and not just tell everybody what to do.
Yeah. I remember in one of my coaching training, they said, listen, we just want to say this right off the top. If you are having some need met for you by being a coach, you're going to want to think about doing something else. Right. And I thought, wow, I just feel sort of called out, and I guess maybe that's a little bit different than a fixer, but it's like you want to, you want to help people. Right. But a lot of it, there's a certain place you have to sit in that relationship, you know? And I guess we didn't really talk about coaching as much. So I wonder, what is it like for someone to coach with you if they were to hire you as a coach?
Well, first, I just want to say I don't necessarily see it the same way as what that person said.
Gotcha.
I think that it is serving a need, and the need that I've defined in my book is transcendence. It's about contributing, it's about giving beyond yourself. And I think we do have an actual human need to do that when we're fully resourced as people. We, want to give back. And that's kind of what the cover of my book is
Wow.
about, where it's this fruit that we wanna offer back in the world when
It's
we're
upside down.
health oh, and how cute. That is a really good promo, "Hey, guys, wanna, like, rise and then root." No, you gotta root and then rise. Thank you. So, yeah, so the idea is that, we have 6 human needs, and so one of them is to give back and to contribute and to transcend. So I think that that's where what I would say to that conversation. And regarding my coaching, I mean, what it's like to be coached with me, I'm like, I think we talked about I last time, so but I'll just pick it up for those who are new. I'm a very practical person. I'm not super Pollyanna, but I have a spiritual side. So, and by spiritual, I'm very into nature-based wisdom. I think it's really approachable for everything. I think it can be open to anybody, no matter what your religion or background is. So, because everybody walks in nature, we all breathe the air, we all, feel the grass or sand or whatever on our feet. So, I think nature has a lot of metaphors to teach us, including the root to rise, which is the tree of life metaphor. So for me, coaching with me, first of all, I don't care what religion you are, what, gender and all that stuff. It's like what I'm looking for the fastest road to transformation. So it's not just solving little problems. That might be something that you want to do with a therapist to get to the deeper root of everything. Mine's a little bit more like I'm looking for how you're meeting your needs in healthy and unhealthy ways and how to get you unstuck so that you can have these really strong, balanced roots, because then we can start working on, where you go from there, where your rise, what you want to be known for and but people are just so stuck. And so, yeah, I just look for ways to get people unstuck and then start to visualize and work on, brick by brick, their road that they wanna pay for their future.
No, I don't know if it was intentional or because I think, like I said, I listened to part one of this and you used language that I've sort of, I can't remember if we talked about it off camera or not. So I'll just ask you. You said, when we're fully resourced, we want to help other people. That literally is like a theory that I bring up to a lot of people. I can't remember if we talked about that. Was that intentional or is that just the words you use?
No, that's just how I see it.
Uh,
And by fully resourced, I mean that we're meeting our needs in healthy
yeah.
ways. Yeah, so
Yeah.
understanding the 6 human needs can be really helpful in that because you can see where to focus. We may have talked a little bit about how we can feel overwhelmed because there's so many competing needs. We need to do 5,000 things in a day. And so, a lot of times when we do a needs assessment, which I offer in the book, and I've started to be second nature at doing those, I can pretty much, identify where somebody can focus to get unstuck or to start to feel more fulfilled. So if you have these 5 root areas and you have 6 human needs, there's all these combinations of ways that you can focus. And then there's so many ways to serve those needs. And that in itself can give people hope that there's at least something they can do. I mean, sometimes when you're feeling stuck and you're not resourced, you feel like there's no hope for, you're just so like at least seeing, well, there's lots of ways that we can go from here. And then the coaching practice is about finding that right one for that person. Then they can at least feel, oh wow, at least I know that there's something I can do, because people just don't like that stuck feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know what? I'll bring up my theory here that I've brought up again several times on this show with other people. And because you basically just said it in so many words, is that when people are fully resourced, and I did use that resource with attention, energy, safety, whatever sort of resource. And I think what was insightful for me is that I came to this belief that if people are fully resourced, they want what comes from that is a desire to help other people. And I thought this was sort of profound because it sort of revealed to myself a belief about just kind of human beings. And it sounds like you sort of I don't want to. I don't want to go so far as to say share that belief, but I just wonder, what do you think about that theory? Where do we overlap, and where do we part ways, perhaps?
It. I
Yeah,
completely resonate with that. So I think we share that. I mean, and like I said about the cover of the book, it's the reason I put it on there is because it's the ultimate end goal, is to have our needs met to the point where we have capacity to help others. And that is a beautiful thing because there's so much fulfillment that comes from that. Not only are we actually helping, the people in our lives. And if we're all doing that, then, we're a supported society, but we're getting something out of it too. I mean, how cool is that? I think all of our needs get met when we feel like we're doing that because we're on purpose. We have a purpose. We feel significant. We're certain that we can offer something of value. And I think that that just helps our self worth so much.
yeah, yeah. I totally agree. That's just when I heard you using that exact language, I was like, "Whoa, did we talk about this?" But it doesn't sound like we did. So that's good. I think that's fundamentally important to have that you phrased it the way you did because like it suggests that, this idea again, I don't know if I thought about it this far, but good and evil, it's like, well, it could be just kind of resourcing. And your kind of premise is like, hey, if we help each other get resourced, then this sort of, whatever resourcing might look like, whether it be, money, space to live, et cetera, then, we're benefiting from that too, in that, we're helping somebody else.
So the way that I define it in the book is, you're meeting a security need when you're talking about, money and the things that you feel like you need to feel secure. And that's the first human need is security and certainty. Typically when people are in a place where maybe they're in crisis mode or, they're having a lot of challenges with providing for themselves, it's hard to get to the other needs. You have to be so focused on paying the rent or taking care of the baby or whatever it is that it's going to override your need to grow or whatever it is. You're in this scarcity or like certain, you're needing that security so bad. And so that's usually if somebody's really in that mode, then you have to focus on getting them into a again more resourced place so that they can move into fulfilling the other needs in healthy ways. And when we're in scarcity mode or we're in a crisis mode, it takes over. And so we could talk about transcendence and helping people and all this stuff, and that's fantastic. And ultimately it is what supports the fabric of society. And there are times when we have to meet our need for certainty in a way that overrides that a bit, at least for a short time.
Yeah, I love that. So, you've walked down this path clearly of rooting and rising. Looking ahead, what does rising mean for you as you glean into the future?
Rising for me is completely 100% about being in service and using my book as my first real platform to do that in a big way. I mean, because I'm only one person, so I can only affect certain number of people, in my life at a given time. But the book can go out to as many people as, can read. And I'm working on an audiobook, so it really should be able to serve at the highest level for those who wanna tune into it. So, I think that if people understand what the benefits are, of understanding really the Root to Rise framework. So, it's not about whether it's a book format or a workshop format or an online course or audiobook. It's about what they're getting out of it, and it's for me, it's serving on the level of being able to get the framework to serve people's lives, to get it to where they understand it enough to make a difference because people can hear things and read and they oh yeah that's good but applying it to your life is the next level. I can't tell you how many articles or books I've read where it's kind of like oh yeah that's good in theory type of thing, but I'm not maybe familiar with it enough or motivated enough to get it into my life. And with this content, there's no end to what I can do to help people because they can read it on their own. But then I can serve at a higher level by coaching groups, talking to people, creating social media content, things that will connect in and resonate beyond just, the words on the page. That's what I am here to do is be successful at affecting a lot of people's lives positively.
Incredible. I think if I remember correctly, we talked about there's perhaps an online course or a community that is in the works right now, or can you
The
tell us about
online
that?
course was what I did first, actually,
Yeah.
because a part of it was at the time becoming a coach and having an online course was kind of a new thing. Coaches were just starting to come on the scene. I mean, there were really established, well-known coaches like the Tony Robbins coaches, but there was a handful. I mean, really not as many as there is today. I don't know if that's because there became a lot of coach training available, and, there's obviously so many differences in the depth of different coach programs, but when I got certified as a coach, there weren't really that many online courses, and so I was like, "Oh, let's do this," and it also gave me this platform for teaching people where I could still work. I could still work in my marketing job because I've been straddling those 2 worlds for a long time because it became more and more difficult as a coach for me to make money because it takes a lot of investment in exposure, of yourself.
Yeah.
And, people that meet me for the first time, some might like me and go, "Oh, I was totally want to work with her." But other people need multiple, they need to build trust over a long period of time. And so there may not be any actual, relationship outside of them, maybe viewing, my content.
Yeah. We were discussing that this could be, I love that you said there's lofty goals. This Root to Rise could really act as a coach training framework. And so you were discussing what that looked like.
That is actually the area where I think that my rise is going is because Root to Rise is a framework. I have put it together in this very systematic way. Like, you don't feel like it's utilitarian when you're reading it, but you are being moved and guided through a process. So you're learning about your root areas and you're learning about your needs, and then you do an assessment. So you have a personal win. You understand how you've been meeting your needs, you're getting unstuck from things. I call that clearing the obstacles. Then you're building emotional resilience and you're learning about the triad for, how to summon, empowering emotions and how to weather the storms of life. And then you move into the rise, which is a lot about this, transcendence concept that we've been talking about regarding being able to give back and, what you want to be known for and how to put that into action so that you have deeper level of fulfillment and purpose in your life. So if that resonates with anybody, whether they're a coach or a yoga teacher or a healer or just wanting to do it for themselves or for their community, it's an actual, methodology that I've created. And I think I'm not sure if I would offer a certification, but maybe, I don't know. I think that it would at least I can come up with some teacher training tools to help people learn how to use it for others. The book is really how to use it for themselves, and then I can come up with some stuff for people. So that's what I'm excited to do.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a beautiful framework on so many different levels. And I think the sort of nature metaphor that you're using there is just so powerful in a bunch of different ways. It sort of ties us back to our own nature, sort of just to hit it on the nose there a little bit, you know? And I wonder if you have any kind of, I don't want to say testimonials, but like anybody who's gone through or read the book or whatever that's really shared with you something that's really been meaningful for you.
So many now. That's the thing that really keeps me going. So, where I get my energy and my juice is getting that feedback. So when you go to the online course page, there's actually a bunch of videos where people, are telling their story and kind of who they think it's for and how it's affected them. And one particular story was this man who had lost his wife to cancer, and she was definitely the love of his life. They had been together for a long time. They had teenage kids, when she passed, so they had been together a while. And he said, "My love root, my relationship root is," he used this word, was severed. And so he was trying to understand how to regrow roots or rebuild, or strengthen whatever he needed to do, right? He was feeling like one of his roots was basically severed. And I think that was really powerful for me because I saw his progression over time and he did a lot of the work himself, but the framework spoke to him. He uses that word in the testimonial video that it really spoke to him that he had done a lot of other modalities and that it spoke to him. And so over time, he has been able to, move on. It's not like you move on. That I shouldn't use that word. It's what it is that he's been able to grow, a new and it's not and see, this is where it's difficult to explain what
Yeah.
happened to him, but he fell in love again, and he is currently in a successful relationship. It's kinda like how root that was, his root with his wife, may have gotten cut short, but he grew a new root, or offshoot of his love root, however you want to visualize it, with someone new. And I think she would, knowing I have met her before, and knowing her, I know she would have wanted that for him, So it's a beautiful thing to see that he identified the root and issues and addressed them.
What a beautiful story. Wow.
I haven't told that story in a long time, so forgive me for not explaining it eloquently, but he's a true
Yeah.
inspiration. He's a true inspiration. He went through a lot of loss, a lot of grief, and the book does address grief and loss. I
Yeah.
gave it to a therapist one time who was into marriage and family therapy. And the one feedback that I got from her was just how my approach to grief gave her an aha moment that she hadn't thought of before. And she's basically just retiring. So she's been in the game a long time. So to give her anything new, I was just like so honored. And so I can't wait to have that conversation and learn more. And then
Amazing.
seeing the Amazon reviews and stuff coming in, I mean, anybody can go look at those. And just knowing that a lot of them are people I don't know. That's when it's really my friends will have my back and give me a good Amazon
Yeah, of
review.
course. Yeah.
But to read it from people I don't know that it's really hitting home, it's just such a beautiful thing. Keeps me juiced up for sure, wanting to
That's
keep
awesome.
going.
Yeah, that's so rewarding. So rewarding. So as we get close to our time here, I wanted to we had a contest that we were going to do, right? Can you refresh my memory on what our contest was? What we were going to do there?
Yeah. So what we can do is, so I have a free quiz, and the free quiz, what it does is it shows you these needs, these hidden forces, and helps you identify the one that's kind of in the driver's seat right now. So the reason that's so important is when you identify which need is, speaking to you the loudest, then you can address that and then it help you rebalance your roots. So the free quiz on my website, glowliving.com, they can take that. And what we can do we were going to do it for the month of October. I can run it a little bit longer. So let's just say November 15th, I'll pull a winner because to get your results, you need to give me your email address. It's, the way
Yeah,
marketing works these days. But
sure.
I can see the emails that come in a certain period of time, and I'll pull a winner and I'll send a signed copy of the book along with a personal handwritten note from me and, a way to connect in. So, yeah, just go to glowliving.com, take the quiz. You'll start to learn about the needs that way. And then I'll send you a book if you're the winner. And if not, I'll give you a deep discount. I want everybody to
Yeah,
be a winner.
awesome. Well, Chandra, I just want to thank you for working with me through our technical difficulties. You've been an absolutely incredible guest, and the book it just really is incredible. And I appreciate the work you're doing and the opportunity for the listeners to be able to get a signed copy. That's just incredible. So, and all that information will be in the
Yeah.
show notes. So,
Yeah. And I think last time we created a promo code. It was Ryan25.
but it is,
So
yeah,
they get
Ryan 25, right?
25% off. So they just go to glowliving.etsy.com and use
Yeah,
the Ryan25 for 25% off. And I have the books here. I personally sign them. I package them up really pretty and I send them out. And this is something I do as a personal passion. So it's not like, they're just getting it directly from a printer. They're getting it from me.
yeah, awesome. Well, congratulations on all the success you're having, and it's just been a great conversation.
Thank you for your support. It means the world
Yeah,
to me, especially as an indie author. I don't have a big publisher behind me pushing this out. I have to do all the work. So seeing that's resonating with someone like yourself, who I know has, a lot of people that that connected with you and love your message, your voice, and to see how, we vibe. It's just great. I love it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Best of luck.